grandparents who are in nursing homes or assisted living facilities, you can do that today, and we will write a check out to our contact and get that taken care of. Thank you for honoring them. Thank you again for your giving in Convoy of Hope. We gave around $1,000 to Convoy of Hope, and my understanding from a friend of mine who's a director is they are already on their way to the areas that have been ravaged by the tornadoes and trying to take care of people, and so we want to be mindful of that and pray for them. And so this week we will have Wednesday night prayer, time to get together and share our needs with one another, and pray a little bit of devotion. So we invite you to come Wednesday night. Next Sunday we'll have a regular schedule. And then for a couple weeks after that, we do just a Sunday morning service because we know there's traveling involved. And the day after Christmas, we'll have the Sunday morning service at 10:45. And so we invite you to be a part of that and not set Christ aside in order to celebrate Christmas, but that we keep Christ the focal point. And so I also want to say thank you to those of you that came to our house last night. You honored us with your presence, and we had a good time last night introducing people from our different worlds together. So we thank you for being there. Special thank you to my wife, who was in nursery this morning, for laboring for weeks to decorate the house and get food and all that put together. So big thank you to her. And so this morning, we want to continue in series on Ghosts of Christmas, past, present, and future. Been talking a little bit about Christmas Carol. I don't want to preach on a Christmas Carol. It's not inspired, but I do love the story. Of course, Christmas Carol is Ebenezer Scrooge. He's visited by ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. It's written by Charles Dickens around the 1840s. It was written at a time when Christmas was not being celebrated or honored as much as it used to be. And Charles Dickens was honestly trying to make a buck. He was a poor writer. He was trying to get a little bit of money, but as he wrote the story, he found himself more and more enveloped in the story. Last week, we talked about the visit from Ghost of Christmas Past and how God can redeem our past today. This morning, I want to talk to you about what happens when we look at the Ghost of Christmas Present. In the story, the Ghost of Christmas Present comes to visit Ebenezer, and he's dressed like a classic version of Father Christmas, as what you might call Father Christmas, in a long flowing robe. Of course, our modern version of Santa Claus, usually he's the jolly fat old elf in the red suit that scares children at least once a year at the shopping malls around our world, or whatever place you drag your child to meet this man. And then he gives you a candy cane. He says ho, 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 and there's just a lot of stories with it. And I love the story and ideology and what all goes with that. But at this particular time, the Ghost of Christmas Present has a laurel or a wreath on his head, a long flowing green robe, depending on your version of Father Christmas and the story that's given. And he's going to show Ebenezer what's going on in the world around him, so he's aware of it. What's the importance of Ghost of Christmas Present for us today? I think it's very important and very valuable. I was shopping the other day, getting a couple things for church and home and all that, and every now and then you see somebody shopping and you just are intrigued by them, because I'm a people watcher as it is. And a family evidently had decided they were going to take their kids Christmas shopping, and they were going to let the kids kind of pick out their presents as they were Christmas shopping. I read into this only because they had their cart, and the particular store I was going through, they said, now what else do you want for Christmas? And the kids were pointing at it, and they were putting stuff in the cart. If you've ever gone to somebody a day before their birthday or Christmas and said, okay, what do you want for your birthday? And they tell you, you're like, okay, thanks, that's prior. So I guess there's some sense to that. You saved on wrapping paper, and we tried to act, people are not acting like they're actually deceiving each other. But these kids, I had to follow, because here's what intrigued me about this. The cart they had two kids, and the cart was no longer big enough for everything these kids were picking out. I can only assume they weren't going to put them back on the shelf, because that would just be Now, these children at one point had the nerve to look at their parents and say, you never let us get anything. It's because the parents had said no to some ridiculous toy that was on the shelf. Well, all toys are ridiculous by their nature. But these kids they are having a come apart over this toy. And I wanted to walk over and say, do you see these two carts? But isn't that human nature anyway? It's never about what we have, it's about what we don't have. It's not in the having, it's in the getting. It's lack of satisfaction. Our lives are never good enough. Things are never okay. It's always got to be something else. We are, by nature, selfish people. It is part of our sinfulness and our corrupt nature. We are somewhat selfish. Even our good deeds have a measure of selfishness to them. We want to make sure that people know we did a good deed. We want to make sure it goes to exactly what we want the good deed to go for. We are nice to people sometimes because we want something back, kind of a quid pro quo. I'm nice to you, now you're going to acknowledge me. We're kind of selfish people. I'll prove it to you. Aside from parents, if you have, say, some cousins that you do a gift thing with every year, and let's suppose you buy your cousins a gift one year and they don't buy you anything. Approximately how many years are you going to let that go on before you stop buying them presents back? But I thought you were giving just because out of the goodness of your heart. Did I prove my point? Maybe I proved that your cousins were selfish and you shouldn't have been giving them presents to begin with. I don't know. But my point being, we are kind of selfish about it. And even as we live our lives, we are a little bit selfish. You will go to a restaurant today and perhaps you'll have a server who's going to be just a little bit slow. And even though you probably have nowhere to go on a Sunday afternoon except to bedside assembly for Pastor Pillow's sermon of the afternoon, you will be somewhat annoyed at that server. And you will really have to stop. You will be on your way to go somewhere in the next 2 to 3 weeks over Christmas season. You know it's going to be busy traffic everywhere you go. There are intersections I avoid once December hits, and I stay away from those intersections until halfway through January. Rock and Kellogg being one of those. Just not worth the... And it will not occur to me that there is a problem. It will not occur to me that I should be patient with other people. Why? Because I'm the most important driver on the road in that particular moment, and the presents I need to get my family are more important than all these other slobs buying presents for their families. My present will change, and their day will be ruined because one particular dish was not available because that's the only dish they want. They could not possibly have a good Christmas dinner unless that nasty green bean casserole that you like to make. And I'm not a green bean casserole is a waste of ingredients. Go ahead, fight me over it. You're wrong. Did I offend like some of you more than other things? How many of you like green bean casserole? So you just don't like food? I'm kidding. I know everybody here, you have the best green bean casserole. You all roll your eyes when I say I like sushi. Why am I not allowed to roll my eyes when you say you like green bean casserole? Thank you. We're selfish. We don't see what's right in front of us. And it's okay. That's who we all are. We take for granted that we are in a lovely, heated building this morning. Except for the basement. Don't look at me like that. We take for granted that we drove to church this morning. We take for granted that food's going to be there for us after church today. We take for granted that you have clothes on your back. Maybe they're not the newest clothes, but you do have clothes. We take for granted a lot. The ghost of Christmas present comes to Scrooge, and interestingly enough, he doesn't take him, and he's the only ghost who does this. He doesn't take him to his own house. He doesn't take him to anything about Scrooge. Do you know who the ghost of Christmas present takes Scrooge to? The lives of those around him. He takes Scrooge to the house of Bob Cratchit, Scrooge's long-suffering employee, that Scrooge won't give a raise to, and he takes him to his house, and he sees that Bob has more kids than he can possibly manage, and they are going to celebrate over a little Christmas bird that most of us would not think has any place even on our smoker. It's not worthy of our attention on the grill. But they cook this little goose, and Bob Cratchit marvels as his wife cooks it. A masterpiece, a triumph, my dear. And they talk about it, and then they've come home from church where Bob took Tiny Tim. And what's always bothered me in the story is why the rest of the kids weren't in church. But Tiny Tim comes home with Bob, and they've celebrated, And Tiny Tim is marveling at the other people and thinking maybe they'll look at him and realize how good their lives are. And they have a little Christmas bread pudding, for lack of a better, which every movie representation makes it look like something I would never eat myself, but they like it. Plum pudding. No. Have I offended anybody with that? Plum pudding? Okay. And, of course, Tiny Tim concludes the meal by saying, God bless us, everyone. Of course, Scrooge is watching as Bob proposes a Christmas toast to the founder of the feast, Ebenezer Scrooge, and the wife and the children's. I love the wife's response. I wish he had come over here for Christmas dinner because I would give him a plate full of something and he would eat it well. Oh, it's a wonderful story. And Scrooge watches. Scrooge watches as he is taken to his nephew Fred's house as they are celebrating, and they're mocking Scrooge in good fun and talking how selfish he is because he still misses his sister Fran. Scrooge is forced to face the present. And here's the kicker of the story, and I'll talk about another couple places he visits. Scrooge realizes in visiting the present that for all his money and as big as his house is, all that he has, and he's got everything he could ever want, does not have the one thing he wishes he could have, and that's peace, joy, hope. It's a horrible story for Scrooge. I want to challenge you today, and I'm going to be careful how I say this, because I know we are a church of generous people. You gave to Convoy. Many of you have given to the adopted grandparent. You give on a regular basis. It has become too common for me to walk by those bell ringers in the store and look the other way, not realizing where that money goes, not even bothering to look. It has been too common for me to watch TV and see the need that is around me and not be touched or compelled. It's common now in our society. We watch tornadoes ravage a region of our country, and the immediate conversation, and you might have heard somebody say it is, yeah, well, that's not as bad as it was in Greensburg. Not realizing the lives that are being affected today. The story of Christmas present is to look around today, and it should compel us to do a few things. Paul said in Philippians last week, everything in the past I count as rubbish so that I may know Christ. Isn't part of knowing Christ to know the circumstances of today and be thankful? I mentioned those kids that were in the store, had the 2 shopping carts full, and they still wanted more. They wanted the next thing. That's a child thing, but also it's a human thing. Can I challenge you today? I'm going to get to some scripture here in a minute. Those of you know I'm going to preach on scripture, but can I just challenge you today? We used to sing an old hymn in church, and I'll be honest with you, it's not my favorite old hymn. It probably will not make it on our playlist here because of the way we did it. Our song leader would sing the verses and then the chorus to this song, and then in between somebody had to give a testimony. And it was usually the same 4 people gave the same 4 testimonies we had always heard. And the song is not my favorite, but sometimes I wish I could go back and hear the chorus again as we would sing, count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God has done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God has done. Have you counted your blessings? Have we taken time to be thankful? Have we taken time to give thanks for what God has given to us? To be thankful. The ghost of Christmas present is assessing my life. Because here's the good news. As good as your life is, you know there's somebody who's got a better life than you. Here's some more good news. As bad as your life may be, you know there's somebody who's got a lot worse than you. It's a time to be thankful. I want you to jump over to the book of James. James chapter 1, consider it all joy, my brothers and sisters, when you go through trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. And let patience have her perfect work, that you may be perfect and entire, lacking nothing. It's a great book. It's so quotable amongst all the books in the New Testament. But I want you to go to James chapter 4, because when I think about the ghost of Christmas present, I think of this chapter, and I think of these verses. James chapter 4, look at verse 13. Come now, you who say, or if you have a King James version, here's how I memorized it growing up. Go to now. I love that. Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town, spend a year there, and trade and make a profit. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. King James says you're nothing more than a vapor. A puff of smoke. I don't know which version of Christmas Carol is your particular favorite. Maybe you don't like the story. I'll have an altar call later for that. Not all the versions get it right on TV. The Ghost of Christmas Present in the story, in Dickens' story, starts as a young, robust Father Christmas. By the end of the story, in his time, he has become an old, weazened man. His beard is gray. And at the end of the story, when Christmas Day is done and his time is visited, he actually, for lack of a better word, disintegrates into nothing. Because as he says, I age with the day. The present is gone after today. Charles Dickens got that idea from this passage of Scripture. A vapor. Gone. I have plans that I make. I live and die by my calendar. I have a calendar that I keep with a lot of stuff on it. And if I don't, I'll forget stuff or I won't do stuff. It is so common and it is easy to think about Christmas Day today. You got to worry about what house you're going to, what food you're going to take, what food other people are going to bring. Don't forget about the presents and wrapping the presents. And then, oh, by the way, we got to fit in all the fun stuff and got to go look at all the Christmas lights before then. And oh, by the way, we got to do this stuff too. And by the way, what are we doing for New Year's? We won't think about that till later on. And what are we going to do about this? And oh, we turn on the outdoor lights and those lights aren't twinkling. They're supposed to twinkle. And this is going on. Oh no, the present, I just found out they already had one. So now we got to take that back and get something else. Or I got them the wrong size. And the one thing I don't want to give somebody for Christmas is an errand, which is going back to return what I gave them. And all these things going on that we get lost in the day that happens a couple. The ministries, the giving opportunities that are here in front of us right now, today. The chance to live life now is a gift, but it is also an obligation. Everybody breathe in. If somebody sounds like they're wheezing a little bit, move apart from them at least 6 feet. Everybody breathe in. And then maybe aiming down, not in front of you so we didn't pass something around. Breathe out. I have been teaching pre-Kers as a favor to a teacher for several weeks now, and 3-year-olds, some of them with special education needs, tend to get rambunctious. That's the nicest way to say that. But something I have them do, and it's not a New Age thing, it just works, is I say, everybody sit down, put your hands on your bellies, breathe in. There's something about that motion causing them to feel and hear their own breath. It is the calmest part of the day. And I can extend this exercise out to up to 10 minutes if I have to. You're alive. You're not here to put in time until Jesus comes or until you pass. You're alive today, which means God's got an assignment for you today. God's got a job for you, a calling for you today. So what does James say? Go do it. Tomorrow is a great time to schedule things because tomorrow never gets here. It's always tomorrow. It's never today. When are you going to fix that car of yours? Tomorrow. When are you going to start losing weight? Tomorrow, which is January 1st, which becomes January 2nd, which becomes January 3rd. When are you going to start taking yourself seriously? Tomorrow. When are you going to make that difficult phone call? Tomorrow. Go to now. Come now, you who say, for you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. I've been fascinated with Jeff Bezos, the owner of Amazon. sending rockets up into space. And I know there's people who feel like there would be a better use of his money. Perhaps there would, but I'm kind of a sci-fi geek anyway. So we watched yesterday, because Christy knew I wanted to watch it, where Michael Strahan, former football player, news guy, he went up into space. And so he gets on that rocket. And those of you, maybe you don't think you should do that. I'm just telling you, if you're looking to get me something for Christmas, I would love to be sent up into space. Now, if you're wanting to do that in the hopes that I don't return, or that the landing doesn't go well, I still want to go to space, so I'd probably take the opportunity. I just am fascinated by this. And they've had a few voyages go up. But yesterday we watched it and we listened. And they had audio going on inside the capsule. I forget how many people were in the capsule. But they said, we want to play for you the audio inside the capsule. And it sounded like a bunch of toddlers that had just discovered a slide for the first time. Look what I can do. Oh, look at this. Look at this. Oh, it was amazing. William Shatner, who played Captain Kirk, he went up on the last one. I don't know if you know this, for a good part of his adult life, he somewhat resented being Captain Kirk. Because it is. Tomorrow never gets here. Yesterday is gone. The ghost of Christmas present takes Scrooge on a trip today because he wants to see what's right in front of him. Scrooge, you have an employee that you won't even let put extra coal on the fire. You won't give him extra money. You yell at him when he wants to take Christmas off. Look at his family. What could you do? Scrooge, you have a nephew who for any other family would probably be more than happy for you to stay out of his life, but he wants you to come over to his house and play games and meet his family. What are you wasting time for? And then the ghost will take him through the downtown streets of London, seeing the misery, the people who have no jobs, who have no hope, who have no life. I'd like to show you Scrooge's reaction. What happens after he sees what has no life? Tom, we have that video if we could play that.
Will you show me this? What has it to do with me?
Are they not of the human race? Look here, beneath my robe. Look upon these.
What are they?
They are your children. They are the children of all who walk the earth unseen. Their names are ignorance and want. Beware of them. For upon their brow is written the word doom. They spell the downfall of you and all who deny their existence.
Are there no refuge, no resource?
Are there no workhouses? Are there no prisons? There's much. They are hidden, but they live. Oh, they live.
In Charles Dickens' story, the children are not just scrawny children. They actually are so scrawny they become animals. Dickens also throws in, and it's in some versions of the stories, beware of them both, but be especially aware of ignorance. Because ignorance says, what I don't know about won't hurt me. Oh. The statistics are numbing in our world today of those who are hurting, who are hungry, who are unfed, unclothed, not taken care of. This is not a guilt trip. By the way, if you receive it as a guilt trip, you're no better than Ebenezer Scrooge, who says, hide them from me. I don't want to see it anymore. I can't deal with it. We have a generous church here. But we also have people in our neighborhoods, I imagine, who have nothing, who have less than nothing. One of the reasons I enjoy subbing in the schools, and it's also one of the more heartbreaking reasons, is to stay attached to the reality of what's going on in our communities and societies today. Several pastor friends of mine have said we're trying to figure out how to get more active in our communities. I said, substitute in the schools. You will see what's going on. You will see children that their fall jacket looks a lot like their winter jacket, looks a lot like their 0-degree jacket. Being aware of it, children who the only food they will get will be at the school table. It is easy to talk about our government and the handouts they give, and you may have your own political opinions about it. I understand everything. But the reality is that there are some families that they survive based off what they're given, and that's where they're at. It's ignorance and want, and it's becoming aware of what's going on around us. James goes on to say, you're a mist that appears a little time then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. That sounds actually somewhat flippant and the opposite of what James just said. If the Lord wills and allows us to do it, we will, but we'll work. My mom used to look at me and say, you can't follow the Lord if you're not moving. She said that to me often. It's important that we keep going, that we not be ignorant of the situation around us and not be ignorant of what's going on. He says, as it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. So whoever knows the right thing to do fails to do it, for him it's sin. Meaning, rather than living in the guilt of, I don't want to do something, so I'm going to continue to not do it and be okay with feeling guilty about not doing it, James says, if you know you should do something, why not just, do it? I think I may have shared this before, but in substituting one time at our high school, when you substitute at the older grades, they give you less to teach because they assume you don't know what you're talking about, which for many of us is probably true. Would you agree? Don't agree. And I was substituting in a class they were covering geography. And the assignment he left for me to do, to give to students, was a map of the world, and they had to write down the 7 continents. In high school. Write down the 7 continents. I can do that. I'm well aware of America, South America, okay? So this was my job, and he said after they do that, they can have study hall. Study hall's my jam, I can do that. Okay, so I hand it out. One student comes up to the desk, and he brings this piece of paper with me. He goes, I have a question, Mr. Lovell. I said, what's that? He goes, how many of these 7 do I have to do to pass? I said, I'm not understanding your question. Because I really was not. There was a word I wanted to use at him in this moment. It would be inappropriate. But I want to say, how could you be so stupid as to not understand this particular assignment? I said, what do you mean? He goes, no, there's 7. How many do I have to do? Now, a reasonable person would say this. If you know all 7 continents, the time it has taken you to ask me this question, you would have had all 7 of them written down, and you could go about your day. But he wouldn't do that. He said, no, really, how many of these do I have to do? I said, why don't you go just do them all, and we'll be fine. He goes and sits down. 5 minutes passed. He comes up with a blank piece of paper. Mr. Lovell, I really got stuff I need to do. How many of these do I have to do so I can pass? And I just stared. I honestly could not fathom the question. So I realized what I had to do to get this poor young man on with his life. I said, you have to do all 7 of them, or you cannot leave here today. Fine, Mr. Lovell. 7 continents. It barely totals. It's South America, 2 words. North America. It's barely 10 words. And he couldn't. Do you understand? Why not just do it? I don't remember his name. I would say it, and at least 2 of you would probably know who it is, I imagine. But I just was like, I can't fathom this process of you just do it. But we do that in our lives. God, what do I have to do to get to heaven? And God's going, I haven't made this hard for you. In the Old Testament, there's something like do justice, love mercy, walk humbly with your God. Let's just start with those three. Do justice, love mercy, walk humbly with your God. Do those three. Well, what if I only do two of them? How many of the 10 Commandments do I really have to stick to? The Beatitudes. How many of the Beatitudes can I live by and still make it? What does James say? Go to now, you who say today or tomorrow we will go into such a city and buy and sell and get great gain, whereas you know not what is on tomorrow. For what is your life? It is but a vapor. Here, then gone. What you ought to say is, if the Lord wills, we will do this. Didn't Paul say to Timothy, don't neglect the Lord in your youth? I don't think the command was meant to be a burdensome one. We will find that our today becomes a little bit better to deal with. Go with me to the book of Matthew really quick. Jesus is he's in Jerusalem and he's with his disciples. He is hours from being arrested, tried, convicted, executed for crimes he has not done. Hours. He's walking by the temple and his disciples are looking at the temple and they're saying, it's Herod's temple. There was the first temple that was built and it was destroyed. Most people agree there was a second temple built by Zerubbabel, a descendant of David, a predecessor to Christ. That temple was built. It was not as magnificent as the one Solomon built, but it is absolutely magnificent. This temple is amazing. When Cleopatra is on honeymoon with one of her husbands, do you know where she goes to visit? Herod's temple. Is that magnificent? Okay? That's how awesome these temples were at the time, okay? All right. They're going through the temple and the disciples are marveling. What does Jesus say? He says, do not look at this and be marveling, because I'm telling you there's coming a day where one stone will not be standing on top of another. In other words, this is not going to last forever. And then he starts talking about the coming age and what's going to happen. Here's how he brings the coming age, the ghost of Christmas future, to the ghost of Christmas present. Verse 31, when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. Before him will be gathered all the nations, and he will separate people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will place the sheep on his right, the goats on his left. The right side was a place of honor in those days. The left side was a place of dishonor. A sheep had much more value to a shepherd than a goat. A goat is a bully. You can't get as much meat for him. You can't get as much milk from him. It's not as valuable in those days as the sheep. And quite frankly, sheep reproduce at a much faster rate than goats. Was that a nice way to say that? Okay. You get more bang for your buck. Okay? Verse 34, the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, and inherit the kingdom prepared for you for the foundation of the world. And here's why. For I was hungry. You gave me food. I was thirsty. You gave me drink. I was a stranger. You welcomed me. I was naked. You clothed me. I was sick. You visited me. I was in prison. You came to me. The righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry, feed you, thirsty, give you drink? We know what you look like. We're following you. We've never seen you in those situations. And when did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the king will answer them, truly I say unto you, as you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers, you did it unto me. Can I point something out about this group? They don't do this because it's commanded. They don't do it. They do it because it's a natural result of the character built into them. There was no command to do those things of what it was said here. He says, when you've done it to the least of these, my brethren, there was never a command issued to do this. Never. There was charity given in the Old Testament, but on this list, this is our character. This is what we do. Okay? Then he will say to those on his left, the goats, depart from me, you cursed, into the eternal fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry. You gave me no food. I was thirsty. You gave me no drink. I was a stranger. You did not welcome me in. Naked, you did not clothe me. Sick and in prison, you did not visit me. Then they will answer, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger? Follower is this. This is not a grace doesn't count anymore passage. It's saying, if grace and mercy are alive in my heart, it is a natural response to see the hungry, feed them, to see the sick, to see the naked and clothe them, to see those in prison and take care of them. It is a natural response for those who are struggling in their faith to think inwardly as Mr. Scrooge and think, are there no government workhouses? Is there nothing for the poor? Do you know what the Ghost of Christmas Present is saying to Scrooge? There is resource for those people, Scrooge. And who is it? You. You do it. The Ghost of Christmas Present is the least haunting of all three ghosts, but he is in many ways the harshest of all the ghosts. Last week, I asked you to make a list of the three things that you are most in. I looked through the pews to make sure nobody wrote anything down and left it there, so if somebody sat in your pew this week, they'd be like, wow, I didn't know that about him. Or you have the list of three things that you wish you hadn't done or you have regrets. Those of you at home, you're in the privacy of home, you can do this however you want, as long as your spouse doesn't see it. So you have those three things from last week. I'd like for you to make a new list this week. And these are your to-do list. What are three things that you need to do in the present to truly honor Christ? And this is different for everybody. It's different for everybody. Some of you have situations that you need to get your house in order. You need to fix it and take care of it. Others of you may know of a situation of somebody on your block, and every day you see that they are hurting and that they are woefully without food, or you see what's going on, or a kid that needs a jacket, and you keep saying, I wish the school would take care of that. The schools are trying. Maybe you could do it. Maybe you could stop and take care of it. Or maybe there's somebody you can make a difference in their life. Maybe you could get up some money and go to the Salvation Army and throw it in there. Maybe you could look up Convoy of Hope on your own and as a family give generously to that ministry all on your own, whether the church called for it or not. Maybe there's something that you could do that would make a difference in somebody's life and make their Christmas better. Can I give you some practical things that we could do today? Some of them are more fun than others. Can I do that this morning? These are things, we ask the question, what would Jesus do? Here's some things I think Jesus would do. You got your pens ready? Okay, we're not going to do them. That's okay. Number one, go to the grocery store this week and buy somebody's groceries. You can do it anonymously. You know, they do that thing in Starbucks. You know, you'll pay for the person behind you. Don't do that. You'll go broke. Because that's $7. And if you haven't seen a video I posted on my Facebook page, a lady had I was thinking of that. It's worth your time to laugh if you need a good laugh. How many of you could use a good laugh this week? Go to my page. You'll see it on Facebook. It's worth a good laugh. It's also on the Mulvane Voice. Because if anybody needs a good laugh, it's the people on the community watch pages. Mercy. Anyway. Lord, forgive me for that. Buy some of his groceries. You could even go, you know what you could do? You could go to Dillon's, and you can get fuel points for this. Go to Dillon's. Was that not nice? I'm sorry. Take some food to somebody you don't know or that you don't know. It doesn't have to be a good reason. You don't have to have anything about it. Just cook up a dinner. You got your family. Buy them bulk. We like to do this every now and then if we think somebody it just needs a good pick-me-up. Just take some food, take it over to them. They'll be like, well, we don't need it. Well, who cares? Take it anyway. Find somebody that's in need, and you don't have to wait for Christmas. Just take it over to them. Give in need. Number 3, pay for somebody's gas this week. Wait at the gas station. Somebody pulls in. Be careful how you walk up to them, lest they think you're about to rob them. And just go to them and say, could I pay for your gas this week? Who would say no to that? I recommend if it's a big white van like ours, don't do that one either. You will go broke. Those, those, you never know how much that's going to be to fill up, especially in today's economy. Find somebody to fill up gas. You say, Pastor, that's going to be a sacrifice. Uh-huh. But have you never had the joyful, almost giddy smile of sacrificing something, but seeing the look on somebody else's face? Sing. You don't have to have the number. You don't have number. You don't have to invite him to church. Just do it. Fourth, go get as many rolls of quarters as you can and drop them off at the Salvation Army bell ringer. And just listen to those suckers drop into that bucket and hear the joy of the ding, 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 ding. Make a difference. Put cash in there. Don't ask that you be recognized. You know, I would like my name and a plaque on the bucket, please, as today's best giver. But just do it. Make a difference in somebody's life. Number 5, organize some kind of a coat drive on your block. Say, we're going to go to a place that will take coats and schools will take them. I can get you the name and numbers of people that will take them. Say, I want to organize as many coats on our block as we can, and we're going to take them, we're going to give them to blessed people. Blankets, scarves, gloves, things that we take for granted. Organize it and do it yourself. It doesn't have to be a church-led activity. Just go do it. What's something else we could do? Go to a restaurant, pay for somebody's meal. Fast food, it's easy to do. Go to Hog Wild. Those of you who go to, some of you are going to go to Hog Wild until I suggested it. Go to Hog Wild. Somebody standing in line behind you, turn to them and say, I'm going to pay for your dinner today. They say, no, thank you. You just look at them and say, Pastor said that I can't go to heaven unless I pay for somebody's food today. And just pay for the food. Don't say you have to pay for anybody behind you. Just bless them and honor them. Why not? Do something fun. Buy some candy. I would recommend, if it's individually sealed, take it to the kids on your block. Stop being the old curmudgeon on the block. Be the one that everybody likes. Take them food. Candy's a cheap way to do it. Take them ice cream bars. You said it's cold. Do you think kids care? How many of you would turn down an ice cream bar even if it was 15 degrees outside? Mike, take that ice cream bar. Honor somebody. Pray for people. You're at the restaurant today. Waitress comes by and says, what can I get for you? Say, we're about to pray for our meal. Is there anything in your life we can pray with you about as we pray for a meal? You don't have to stay, but we would just like to pray for you. I've only been turned down one time. And that was because the waitress was going through so much garbage in her life, she did not want to break down right there. We prayed for her anyway. Make a difference. Call up your school. It's the last week of school. Ask them, is there anything we can do to help you this week? They have teacher parties. There's classes that do not have any volunteers. Nobody's offered anything. So take a tray of cookies to the teachers. Say, we are thinking of you today. There's not a teacher in this world that will turn down a Sonic drink. Not one. Amen? Is there a better present from anybody than when somebody comes in with that Sonic drink and says, I was thinking of you? It could even be the blandest tea they have, but you will guzzle that thing down and say, thank you for the caffeine. There are differences you can make. I'm not trying to be funny here, so don't take a dozen donuts to the police station. I'm not trying to be funny. Take them and just say, we were thinking of you. You can say you're from the church. You don't have to say anything. Just take them and honor them. You say, Pastor, where are you thinking of all these things? Well, a couple things. One, these are things we have tried on various things, either as a church or as a family. But two, when you sit down and think about it, it's really not hard to creatively think about how to bless somebody today. Order a pizza for somebody. Make a difference. Those are just really small things. Do those things add up? Well, let me ask you a question. Do they add up for you? Do they amount to something in your life? If somebody just takes 1 second out of their life to say, I'm putting you in front of me, does that add up? Yeah, it does. It does. The list could go on and on, just to let people know we're thinking about them. What does this have to do with Christmas present? I think it has to do with everything. It's being aware of what's going on. Take your kids to do these things. You think somebody's going to turn you down? They won't turn down your kids. unless their last name is Scrooge, and it's pre-conversion, to honor and bless people. I have come to believe that we are relying too much in this day and age on organization of our government and our churches and our schools to do all these things, when these are things that we as Christians could be doing on our own without advertising it, without getting our names in the paper or on the community watch pages. We could just do it because it's the right thing to do. So why not? Why not make a difference? I close with this. It's, I think, a familiar story to you, but it's something that was impactful to me as a kid. There was a few years after my dad had died that people would bring stuff to our house and say, we were thinking of you. And my mom worked diligently every year to give us a good Christmas and all that. There was one year in particular, somebody brought over a dinner for us to have, some kind of a turkey thing. And I remember my mom said thank you, and I knew that year in particular, this was well-timed. I knew it. Just, your kids read you pretty good, right? Your kids are like, oh, they're having a bad day. Everybody go play video games or whatever's going on. And it was just that day. My mom always started every morning on her love seat as we were getting ready for school, and you could hear her praying. And if you could hear her loudly, you knew it's going to be one of those things. And every Christmas, my mom would say, we may not have much Christmas, but we're going to have Christmas. And she always went above and beyond. So I remember this dinner came over, and I was like, I looked at it as an answer to prayer. And my mom said, thank you to the people. And my mom said, go get your jacket on. We're get in the car. Okay. My mom drove a 1983 Oldsmobile Delta 88. Most of you know them today as cruise ships. Just the last of the great boats, right? The trunk could hold my family. Okay? And she just ran this thing into the ground, but we got in the car, and I got in the car, and my mom loaded up that dinner in the back seat. And I was like Isaac looking at Abraham. Where are we going, Mother, with our sacrifice? What are you doing? And I remember we drove to Kansas City, Kansas. We lived in Overland Park, Kansas, which was a nice suburb, but we were not in the wealthy part of it. We were in a good part of it. We drove to Kansas City, Kansas, to a neighborhood that my mom needed my help to get up the stairs. She had loaded everything on the car, but we took it upstairs. And she knocked at one of the doors, and the lady that opened it was a lady in the church. And I say this to you so you have the context. It's not something I say with pride or humor. I refer to her as the Smelly Lady. Because when she came to our church, there was always an odor, a strong odor. And I just had never had contact with her very much. And my mom gave her the meal. And I didn't know this had included some cookware for her to use to cook the meal, assuming she didn't have it. Now that meal would have fed our family on a holiday, but that meal was going to feed her for weeks if she took care of it. My mom never talked about this whole day with me. She simply let my eyes be the lesson as I understood that my mom was showing me, and she wasn't doing this to make me think highly of my mom. She was doing it so I would understand there's always somebody that needs us to take care of them as much as we sometimes need somebody to take care of us. Moral of the story, and I don't know that God arranged this because of what my mom did. It just happened. My mom got a bonus that year and took care of everything we would have needed. I'm sure there were other times it didn't work out that well. Where can you make a difference today? That coworker you don't like? Give them a gift card. That's not going to cause you to like them, but you did the right thing. And they may actually become meaner. You may actually be helping them realize they should be a meaner person because you're actually paying them and they're going to be mean. It's not a fix-it. It's just doing it because it's the right thing to do. Montez, would you come to the piano? Jesus, we are so thankful today that we are in this beautiful building on the Lord's Day, and you've taken care of us. We're thankful because you've never left the righteous forsaken. And we're glad. But God, sometimes we are like Ebenezer. We live in our ignorance of the want that is around us. So today we release ourselves from that ignorance. And we engage in a community that needs us. The community of our neighborhoods, of our schools. Help us, God. Help us to see beyond our immediate need